Good evening. Welcome to Scotland at 7 with me, Gordon Ross. It is what is it today? It's the 25th of February today. Anyway, joining me this evening is an old friend of the programme, making his comeback this evening, and that is Chris McCusker. Welcome back to the programme, Chris.
He's come back. You make me sound like a boxer. Good evening, Gordon. It's good to be back.
It's nice to have you back in the programme, Chris. Well, straight into the coronavirus first of all, and as of 2 o'clock today, a total of 1,673,844 people in Scotland have been tested through NHS Scotland labs and the UK Government regional testing centres since the start of the pandemic. Of these, 1,473,438 were confirmed negative, whilst 200,406 have tested positive. There are 769 new confirmed cases of COVID-19. This, of course, will be an underestimate of the number of cases. Not everyone with the virus will display symptoms, and not all those with symptoms will be tested. There were 31 new reported deaths of people who have tested positive. The number of patients in Scotland who've died from complications caused by the coronavirus infection now stands at 7,084. This number only includes those who have died having received a positive test for the virus in the previous 28 days. Of the people who have tested positive, 967 were in hospital last night, 89 of whom were in intensive care. Now, as of 8 o'clock this morning, 1,515,980 people have received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccination, and 56,661 had received their second dose. The latest UK daily figures published today show that 122,070 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness, an increase of 323 since yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings and not just hospitals. Now to tonight's main headlines, and the Scottish Budget has passed stage 1. The proposed legislation to implement Scotland's budget for 2021-22 has passed its first parliamentary hurdle. MSPs have voted to endorse the general principles of the budget bill at stage 1. They've also approved the Scottish rate resolution setting all income tax rates and bands. The budget addresses the challenges of the ongoing pandemic and lays the foundations for recovery. It includes a 12-month extension of 100% rates relief for retail, hospitality, leisure, aviation and newspaper businesses, £1.1 billion for jobs and skills, record for health services, £11.6 billion settlement for local government and new funding to tackle climate change. The Finance Secretary, Kate Forbes, said, "I have sought to engage constructively to deliver a budget that meets the needs of the nation. We have listened and we have delivered on key asks. Today's vote sends a signal that this Parliament can work together during a national emergency to support our economy and public services, to continue the vaccination programme and drive our recovery from the pandemic. I remain committed to further dialogue with all parties in the coming days to build and reflect consensus across Parliament and to secure the budget's passage. I also welcome Parliament's approval of our tax policies, which deliver the certainty and stability that is needed from the tax system for individuals and businesses in Scotland. No Scottish taxpayer will pay more income tax in 2021-22 than they do now on their current income. And for a fourth consecutive year, more than half of Scottish income taxpayers will pay less tax than if they lived anywhere else in the UK. Well, Chris, the budget has finally passed its first stage in Holyrood. And looking at the key headlines here, is there anything that stands out particularly to you?
Obviously, basically keeping everything the same as per last year, with the added investment for business. It basically shows that regardless of the various sideshows that are going on in Scottish politics at the moment, it demonstrates the fact that the Scottish Government are able to get on with the day job, Gordon.
So that you feel, Chris, that it's very important for taxation to remain unchanged at the moment. Rishi Sunak was widely anticipated wanting to raise taxes in his own budget. Is this a little pushback, do you think, from the Scottish Government saying we're not going to do that?
Well, I think it's, again, Kate Forbes is I personally think has pulled out a blinder to be able to retain the status quo, as it were. And obviously, in a run up to the election in May, I don't think I'm giving the game away by saying that she was never going to, raise taxes. That's never a vote winner to begin with. So I think it just demonstrates, as I say, the ability of the Scottish government to steady, a central chartered course, shall we say, for the country as we go through the pandemic, whilst at the same token adhering to what needs to be done, which is obviously ongoing investment into various projects and infrastructure,
Of course,
as well
Chris.
as business.
Sorry, Chris, what were you saying?
I'm saying, the investment into infrastructure and business as well.
Yeah. I was interested by the last comment that was made by the finance secretary, and that was that no Scottish taxpayer will pay more income tax now than in the future than they do now, but also that Scottish income taxpayers will pay less tax than if they lived elsewhere in the UK. Surely that is. That is just making Scotland seem to be a much better place to live than anywhere else in the UK from a tax viewpoint, at least.
Well, it's always been the case, and the narrative that was pushed by the unionist parties when a couple of years ago, when we were able to set our tax bands, was that they always perceived it to be that Scotland was going to be the higher taxed than the rest of the devolved competencies. And when I say devolved competencies, that also includes England as well. So it is not necessarily the case that Scotland is actually the highest taxed. What it is designed to do is to actually tax those who earn the most.
Yeah.
But from my own point of view, and this is obviously from a socialist point of view, I would like the higher paid in Scotland to be taxed more. It's no secret that I'm in great favour of the redistribution of wealth, and I'm not talking about individual people. I'm talking about big corporate companies that do their utmost to avoid paying tax to the Scottish government. Some of the companies actually pay tax to the English government and are operating in Scotland, which is clearly, is wrong, and it should be rebalanced and it should be redressed.
So, do you think, Chris, that the British government is still in charge of too much of the taxation in Scotland at the moment, particularly as you were mentioning there with regards to corporations and companies?
Way too much. They have a Svengali like yield hold upon Scotland. It's basically it's two hands around Scotland's neck. Whilst not actually applying the amount of pressure to stop us breathing. It just basically stops us from operating properly as any other country. I mean, I'm absolutely fascinated, and people might think that's a bit bizarre, but I'm always fascinated about the status of the likes of the Isle of Man and Jersey and all these autonomous British sort of like
dependencies.
Dependencies. Where the only intervention from the British government is on a military basis, and they are given carte blanche to do what they like. That obviously includes Gibraltar as well.
Yeah.
I think the Tories, and I might be tempting fate here, but I think the Tories, it's surprising that they've never offered that to Scotland. Not that
Well,
you know, I mean, it is what you could call near to full federalism as you could possibly get. But it's always surprised me that they've never actually offered that to try and placate the
yeah.
independence question.
Well, that's a question that we'll have to leave unanswered for the moment, Chris, I'm afraid. We'll need to press on. And the pandemic has pushed spending to £56.35 billion. All £8.6 billion of consequential funding guaranteed to the Scottish Government for 2020-21 has been allocated to tackling the pandemic, a new budget update confirms today. The spring budget revision, the SBR, details a further £2.5 billion of coronavirus COVID-19 spending since September. This includes £780 million for business support, taking the total to more than £3 billion in the current financial year, and an additional £494 million to health and sport, while £745 million has been reprioritised within existing budgets to help deal with the impact of COVID-19. During the year, the Scottish Government has also deployed a total of £100 million of resource and capital funding from the Scotland Reserve. The Finance Secretary, Kate Forbes, said the SBR highlights once again the enormous economic impact of the global pandemic, which reaches into every area of spending and continues to stretch our resources. It confirms that every penny received by the Scottish Government to tackle COVID-19 has been channelled to where it is most needed. Chris, this is evidence, I guess, if we needed it, that the Scottish Government is spending the money that it is allocated, especially through the Barnett consequentials, I suppose, in the places where it's intended. But was there ever any doubt that the Scottish Government would spend money where it was intended?
Absolutely not, Gordon. There was never any doubt. What Kate Forbes did highlight in Parliament the other day was the fact that the timing of the allocation of money has always been a problem from the UK government, and it hasn't always went the way that it was normally supposed to go. So it's not a case of mixed messages. It's just a case of a lack of information coming from the UK government as to when these Barnett consequentials are going to be apportioned to the Scottish Government. So that's what I was saying earlier on when I say that Kate has played an absolute blinder in coming up with this budget, because she has really designed this budget with one hand behind her back and two eyes closed with regards information coming out of Westminster.
Well, of course, Chris, it's quite well known that Rishi Sunak deliberately delayed the budget, and Kate Forbes was forced to do what you've just said, a blind budget. She's had to estimate what would be forthcoming from the UK government and plan accordingly. But she seems to have hit the target on this occasion.
Well, that's all credit to her, and I think the rest of Scotland should know that she has done a huge amount of work where she has been, could we use the terminology, ham-fisted in actually devising the budget because of the lack of clarity coming out of Westminster.
Well, you did say, Chris, that she was operating in the dark, really, not knowing what Rishi Sunak was going to be including in the grant to Scotland. But to guess it so accurately seems quite an achievement. And I'm always impressed by the fact that, Kate Forbes is a very young woman, and traditionally politicians in charge of finances are usually much older politicians. And I think for Kate to jump in here, she really was thrown in at the deep end, wasn't she?
Well, I'm actually going to share something with you today, and again, I got it from the James O'Brien radio show that I listen to, from time to time, and he was talking about Gavin Williamson, and predominantly he was talking about older people being in charge of education, or people being in charge of education, and and they're just not educated, such as the case of Gavin Williamson. But what it is the fact that for years it's been older people who have set the benchmark for education based on the 50 years previous when they were at school, and 50 years previous when they were operating in business, and 50 years previous to when they were sort of like, they last had a proper credible job. An awful lot of people, do view the fact that, Tory MPs are not really credible jobs. But what the basis of the argument is the fact that there should be younger people in charge of these important jobs, because they're closer to the younger people that it's targeted at.
Yeah, I understand.
Do you know what I mean? They understand what young people need, as well as obviously understanding what old people need. So, I think, honestly, it was a masterstroke to appoint Kate instead after Derek Mackay had vacated his position. And I think that she will just go on from strength to strength.
Well, let's hope so, Chris. We're going to move on now. The Business Minister has responded to the furlough statistics. Responding to the latest furlough statistics published today, the Business Minister, Jamie Hepburn, said the number of furloughed jobs in Scotland rose by just over a quarter in December and January, showing the continued impact of the pandemic on Scotland's workforce. I am again urging the UK government to step up and commit to extending the furlough past April to provide vital reassurance for employers and employees alike. We are doing all we can to protect Scotland's economy and to ensure that as many people as possible keep their jobs. Our package of support to businesses now totals over £3 billion, and our support for the economic recovery is worth more than £1 billion. On top of this, we have extended non-domestic rates relief for the whole of next year, worth more than £700 million to businesses, and we will ensure that support continues to be available as we emerge from lockdown. Stability and certainty for businesses and job creation is a priority of 2022 through an investment of over £1 billion in jobs. So here we have another minister basically outlining what the purpose of this budget was, Chris, and very heavy emphasis on protecting the jobs of workers in Scotland, while still being forced to keep asking these questions of the UK government. Will they extend the furlough scheme past April? And still, we're not hearing any reply, are we?
Well, no, we're not. And again, I go back to, the fact that there is a distinct lack of clarity and leadership coming out of Westminster. It's as well as advised that Jamie Hepburn is highlighting the need for the extension of furlough, because many businesses in Scotland are relying on that stream of money in order for when we actually do transition out of the pandemic and start to open the economy in a safe way, that they will need that money in order to invest in staff. Now, I know for a fact my old place of employment, Glasgow Airport, is operating at a tenth of its capacity, with regards to staff. Once Glasgow Airport reopens, it will need to advertise for ramp staff. It will need to advertise for check-in staff, dispatchers.
Is it possible, Chris, is it possible, due to the fact that the airport's aviation industry is getting some of this funding to help it to keep going through this period, is it not possible that the airport itself might just rehire the people they've been forced to lay off? It would save a lot of fuss, wouldn't it?
Well, yes, but what we've got to be careful of, Gordon, and the trade union group have been doing an awful lot of work on this, is the fire and rehire tactics that have been deployed by companies around the UK.
It's a way of lowering wages, Chris, isn't it? You sack somebody and then make them reapply for the job at a lower salary.
yeah. But it's as well to point out that the comrades that I'm talking about at Glasgow Airport were not sacked.
No.
They were obviously made redundant
Yeah.
because of the actual pandemic. And I would hope that if those employees wish to reapply for their jobs, that they would be reapplying on the same terms and conditions
Well,
as when they left.
let's hope so,
But
Chris.
I'm merely highlighting the
Yeah.
fact that the fire and rehire tactics that have been deployed, because corporate business, likes to take advantage of any type of situation in order to save themselves some money, Gordon.
Okay, Chris, well, we're going to be talking about just that in just a moment. In fact, with our next story, the Chancellor must extend the furlough scheme or face mass redundancies. The SNP has urged Rishi Sunak to use the upcoming UK budget to extend the furlough scheme across the UK or face mass redundancies. The call comes following the latest furlough scheme figures published by the UK government, showing the number of people being supported by the initiative has risen from 4 million to 4.7 million, with the majority of those being women. Ahead of the budget next month, the British Chambers of Commerce has warned that a quarter of British businesses will fire their staff immediately if the Chancellor fails to extend the scheme. Commenting, the SNP Shadow Chancellor, Alison Thewliss MP, said this budget gives Rishi Sunak a chance to help millions of people across the United Kingdom. He must commit to strengthening support for workers by extending the furlough scheme rather than withdrawing it prematurely and facing mass redundancies. Now, Chris, the Prime Minister recently outlined the steps that he planned to take England out of its current lockdown. And bearing that in mind, is there a risk, do you think, that Sunak will pull the rug out in terms of the furlough scheme at the point where England does this exit from its current lockdown?
I think it's highly predictable that it will do so, and that obviously is going to be to the detriment of Scotland because we're approaching the exit of lockdown in a slightly more slower and pragmatic way. Uh, you know, it's no surprise to anyone that I think that Boris Johnson is going too fast, too far, too soon. But that is the desire, need, shall I say, of
Mhm.
the way that the Tory party operate, because it's the economy first and people later, sadly. So,
So,
we will have to. I really hope that people understand that we will have to bite our lip and take our time in reopening the economy in Scotland, because the opposite is true with the Scottish Government, where people come first and the economy comes second.
well, certainly, Chris, the Conservative Party has long form for this kind of thing. I mean, I'm going back to the time of Margaret Thatcher, when it was considered that the high rates of unemployment caused by the sell-off of nationalised industries was an acceptable collateral damage, according to the Tories of the time. Do you think they still have that attitude to the workforce?
Yes, they do, and it's always been the case. The Tories have always adopted the mantra of the survival of the fittest, and is basically, that obviously creates a race to the bottom, and it's obviously to the degradation of the working class, who is basically, if you're not trying to survive, then you're forgotten about. And that has been the Tory legacy for, I would suggest, since the middle 60s.
Yeah,
Because they have always pushed to aspire people to do more,
yeah.
uh, and they have forgotten about the people who are unable to do more. And again, that's to the degradation of people who are disabled, people who have got mental health issues, people who have got social issues that their government are unwilling to address.
Okay.
You only have to look at Margaret Thatcher's policy on housing, where she scrapped council housing in favour of, basically telling everybody to go out and buy their own home.
Yep.
I can't remember who the politician was, but one of his favourite sayings was "Get on your bike in order to work."
It sounds like Norman Tebbit or somebody like that.
Well, I think it was something like that. But basically, yeah,
Yep.
that was that. The Tories have never shied away, from pushing Waynes up chimneys. If they could do it today, they would do it tomorrow.
Okay, listen, Chris, I'm going to have to stop you there and move on, I'm afraid. To better news this time, and a poll shows that the SNP is within reach of a Holyrood majority. The SNP are within reach of winning a majority at the Scottish Parliament election in May, according to a new poll. The Ipsos Mori poll, commissioned by STV, found that the SNP are on course to increase their number of SNPs at Holyrood, whilst the Tories and Labour are predicted to lose seats. The poll published today also found that 44% of voters agree that Scotland's right to choose its own future is very important when deciding which party to support, with the poll showing independence and the Constitution is the most important issue for voters. The poll also shows a majority would vote yes to independence in a referendum, making it the 22nd poll in a row to show a majority for independence. Commenting, the SNP's deputy leader, Keith Brown, said, "This poll shows that voters in Scotland are continuing to put their trust in the SNP, ahead of the Westminster parties, to lead Scotland's recovery. The people of Scotland want to have their say on Scotland's future in a post-pandemic referendum, and the clearest way to secure that opportunity is with an SNP majority in May." Now, Chris, the current distractions notwithstanding, the vote share for the SNP seems to be holding rock solid at the moment, which is remarkable given the huge onslaught of negative publicity seems to be being orchestrated in the mainstream media.
Yeah, and the mainstream media will jump upon any, the slightest thing. They will also jump on the fact that the poll shows 52-48, where I think the last poll was showing 56.
Yeah.
44.
Yeah, they've been as high as 58, I think, and as low as 52.
Yeah. So they'll look at that and they'll put it out through their propaganda broadsheets that support is waning. Where in actual fact, you and I know that support is sustained, and this poll obviously shows that the SNP are on track for their majority in Westminster, which is good because we have to remember what Boris Johnson said, and he was very deliberate in saying this, is that the SNP must show a majority, an overwhelming majority of SNP MSPs in Holyrood in May. So he's not talking about a majority of independence MSPs. He's talking about a majority of SNP MSPs.
But of course,
so that's why it's imperative that the SNP get at least 70 seats returned in May. And this poll suggests, I think, 72. So,
well, that's remarkable. If it's true, Chris, if it can manage 72, that's almost a clean sweep, isn't it, of the constituency vote?
Yeah, it pretty much is.
It would be a historic first, I think, as well, for any party within Holyrood to achieve such an enormous first vote majority as that.
Well, you have to remember that the whole Hunt system was devised by the Westminster establishment that was not to be broken, and no party could actually gain that supermajority. And the SNP have already done it once. It's highly probable that they can do it again. And I've always advocated the fact that the time for new parties within Scotland to emerge and challenge the SNP is after we get independence and not before.
Well, Chris, I'll take that under advisement. We're going to move on now, and Boris Johnson has set up a committee to focus on keeping the UK together. Boris Johnson has set up a cabinet committee in an attempt to retain some grip on his attempts at keeping Scotland from voting for independence to replace the collapsed Number 10 Union Unit. Oliver Lewis, a key aide who was appointed to head the unit, quit last week after just 2 weeks in the role. His predecessor, Luke Graham, was sacked earlier this month. The Prime Minister is now changing tack to head up the anti-Scottish independence himself, with just months to go until the Holyrood elections, which polls predict will result in a majority SNP government committed to holding an independence referendum in the early part of the new parliamentary term. Johnson will next week chair the first meeting of the Union Strategy Committee, which will also be attended by senior cabinet colleagues, including the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, the Cabinet Office Minister, Michael Gove, and the Secretaries of State for Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, as well as Lord Frost. The committees are being modelled on the Brexit strategy and operations groups that directed internal government affairs in preparation for the UK to leave the EU. Responding to the news, the SNP called it utterly humiliating for Johnson. According to Kirsten Oswald, the party's deputy leader in Westminster, the entire shambolic episode is a perfect analogy for the Tory government's undemocratic, anti-independence stance. It's crumbling under the first sign of any pressure. Well, Chris, it certainly has been a difficult time for Boris Johnson's so-called union unit. It seems to have folded its tent remarkably quickly, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, this is the third attempt to try and organise this union unit, which is based in Whitehall, and I led to the understanding that Luke Graham, whilst he was sacked from his post in Whitehall, he was given a job in the Edinburgh unit, shall we say? You know, that gregarious building round the corner from Holyrood.
Yes.
He's sort of like heading up the Scottish operations, shall we say, and tugging his forelock and doffing his cap towards the likes of Michael Gove.
Chris, I was going to say it must. Chris, I was going to say it must be quite difficult for the Prime Minister to come up with a group which is anti-independence, but they can't call it that because they'd be using public money for political purposes, which they're not allowed to do, are they?
Well, no, they're not allowed to do it. But then, that's never stopped the Tories before. We only have to look at the dark money that was used in 2014, which was swirling around the Tory coffers in order to pay off the DUP. So, they can't come out full-faced and say this is an anti-independence unit, designed to stave off, the vile separatists in Scotland. So they have to sell it better than that. What they have to do and what they will not do, I will be able to tell you, and this will come as no bombshell, but they will have to make the case for the union, and they can't. They simply can't. There is no case for the union. There is no case for continued food banks. There is no case for welfare cuts. There is no case for making people homeless. There is no case for the constant pairing up with Israel, and the support of arms. There is no case for not continuing the furlough scheme. Basic things like that. So the union doesn't have a case now. I mean, you only have to look again. But when I was mentioning Gibraltar and
Uh,
the smaller islands. You look at the Isle of Man, and a couple of days ago, they've just started negotiations with the EU for fishing rights because their fish are not sovereign.
that's an
And
interesting one, Chris.
that was the whole case of Brexit. So you're now seeing that the fact that they have quite clearly, and you know this as well as I do, they have sold the British people a pup, and they have nothing to offer the British people anymore. They may have something to offer England, but they certainly don't have anything to offer Scotland.
Okay, Chris, let's leave that pinned to the wall just now. An MP's demand clear time. An MP has demanded a clear timetable on alcohol duty reviews. The SNP MP has called on the UK government to outline a clear timetable for completion of the review on alcohol duty in a debate in Westminster today. Brendan O'Hare MP, the chair of Westminster's APPG on Scotch whisky, called Boris Johnson to deliver a clear route map following a devastating financial year for the industry due to high US tariffs as a result of Brexit. The UK government's failure to resolve the issue adds to a growing list of broken promises made to Scotland by the Prime Minister following the agreement of his botched Brexit deal last year. The UK's Scotch whisky exports have been reduced by a staggering 22.6% in 2020, with losses exceeding £500 million. This is another interesting one, Chris. Brexit has cost the Scotch whisky industry £500 million in a single year. That is an absolutely eye-watering amount of money, isn't it?
It is absolutely horrendous. I have to correct you because he's a friend of mine, and the MP in question is Brendan O'Hara.
And what did I say, Chris?
You said Brendan O'Hare.
I beg your pardon. I misread it, Chris.
He is certainly not a grave robber, that's for sure. But Brendan has been assiduous in this, and that £500 million that you quite rightly point out, Gordon, that is nothing. Without notwithstanding what the Scottish whisky industry is losing to the likes of places like America because of this hike that Donald Trump had made on Scottish export, because of the situation regarding Boeing, I think it was.
Yep.
And that has to be resolved as a matter of urgency. And if you're really looking for clarity and leadership, you're really looking at Boris Johnson to actually start talking to Joe Biden to try and end this feud between America and Britain, because it is absolutely killing the Scottish whisky industry at the moment.
Chris, I seem to remember that when Mr. Trump was the president and he introduced this tariff, I think it was something ridiculous like 25% on aircraft parts, which I believe were manufactured in Northern Ireland and were being sold into the UK market. It basically put them out of business, didn't it?
Yeah. It was basically that Boeing is an American company, and the company in Northern Ireland was Bombardier.
Bombardier, yes.
And in conjunction with Airbus, they were basically delivering cheaper alternatives to what Boeing was, and and this all comes down to the fact that Donald Trump looked at Britain and said, "What is the most export into America that we can actually hit?"
And that was it.
And the biggest export market to America from Britain is Scottish whisky, and it's not even British; it's Scottish.
So
We've got no bone. We have got no dog in this fight whatsoever, and we're being stigmatised because of Britain's folly. Because they were too timid to actually bring Donald Trump to account for his actions.
Fair enough, Chris. So we're basically suffering a sanction because of what Donald Trump did during his tenure.
Yeah, and and that sanction has been perpetrated by Boris Johnson because Donald Trump had Boris Johnson in his pocket.
Well,
And that is the long and short of it, Gordon.
Well, with Mr. Biden now in charge, Chris, we'll just have to hope that things change shortly. Anyway, I'm afraid we have to move on now. And the Dutch Parliament says that China's treatment of Uyghurs is genocide. The Netherlands Parliament on Thursday passed a non-binding motion saying that the treatment of the Uyghur Muslim majority in China amounts to genocide, the first European country to make such a statement. A genocide on the Uyghur minority is occurring in China, the motion said, stopping short of directly saying that the country's government was responsible. Canada passed a resolution labelling China's treatment of the Uyghurs genocide earlier this week. The Dutch motion said that actions by the Chinese government, such as measures intended to prevent births and having punishment camps, fell under the United Nations Resolution 260, generally known as the Genocide Convention. The Prime Minister, Mark Rutte's Conservative VVD party, voted against the resolution, which did not recommend the Cabinet take any specific action. A spokesman for the government said that it would respond to the motion later on today. Chris, I know that you have a great interest in overseas affairs, particularly involving minority groups. The Uyghurs seem to have been singled out by the Chinese authorities for special attention, including, I understand, re-education camps, which sound extremely sinister indeed.
Yeah, because they're not signed up to the communist regime, and they are an easy target for the controlling Chinese government. And it is, for all intents and purposes, it is a genocide. And it's actually a shame that they're calling this situation a genocide, but they're not calling the situation in Palestine a genocide. We have to be obviously as an emotive subject, and it is obviously an emotive word. To use genocide in any context. What you have to take into consideration is that is a marginalisation of a section of any community. In this regard, Chinese Muslims,
Chris, sorry to interrupt you. I have a question, and pardon my ignorance, but why has the Chinese government decided to single out the Uyghurs? I know that the Chinese Communist Party, until very recently, only allowed particular religions to exist in China. Is it a religious thing? Are they trying to stamp out the Uyghur religion?
It is, yes. That is in a nutshell. The Chinese government, the actual Chinese country, going back years and years and years, long before there was any talk about Muslims, the Chinese struggled with the introduction of Catholicism back in the day. And it also sought to marginalise anybody who followed the Buddhist faith as well. And basically, as the Chinese government, who have this narrow-minded view that if everybody should sign up to their dream, their vision for their country, and if you step outside the guidelines, then you are going to be marginalised. You're going to be sectioned off from the likes of their communities. Unfortunately, you are going to be subject to some horrendous treatment that, unfortunately, the Western media doesn't want to report. There is anecdotal evidence of people being kept in, containers.
There's certainly been camps, like concentration camps, forced sterilizations and things like this, Chris.
yeah. There are shipping containers within these concentration camps where people have been sectioned out and they have been separated from family members, they've been separated from their children, and all the rest of it, and entered into this doctrine of re-education of the communist way, the communist mantra, and it's. I hate to use the word laughable, but when people look at people like me, as a socialist, as someone who is trying to highlight inequality and stuff like that, and they're all reaching for their copies of Karl Marx to understand, the fact that
Socialism and communism are not the same.
Socialism and communism are not the same. Yep. And this is actually borne out in America. In the election of Joe Biden, where they try to portray him as a socialist in order to try and caricature him, so that people would go, well, if he's a socialist, he must be a communist, and we can't have a communist in charge of the country. It's absolute madness. It's absolute madness. But to get back to the fact is that there is humanitarian issues being doled out to this to these Muslims, and the Western media need to open their eyes and start reporting it, because it is basically borderline atrocity.
Okay, thank you, Chris. We're going to move on now, a bit closer to home this time. And there have been changes to the supply of blood plasma. Plasma medicines used to treat people with autoimmune diseases and other conditions will soon be able to be produced using plasma from donors in Scotland, ensuring patients have improved access to treatment. These medicines, called immunoglobulins, are produced from blood plasma donated by the public and manufactured through a process called fractionation. In 1998, UK plasma has not been able to be used for fractionation in response to concerns over the spread of the human variant BSE, known as mad cow disease, and called variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. Instead, the NHS has fully relied on imports of plasma-derived medicinal products from other countries. Now, following a comprehensive review of the risks associated with using UK plasma for fractionation by the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, experts from the Commission on Human Medicines have advised that the use of UK-sourced plasma to manufacture those treatments is safe and can now recommence, as the risk is now considered to be negligible. Chris, this seems like it's been an awfully long time in the making, this decision. I know that for years the British NHS was importing plasma supplies from places like America, and there were problems, I know, because of AIDS in America way back in the day. But surely this is a no-brainer. UK plasma should really always have been used for such medicines.
Well, yeah, but it actually further highlights the lack of investment into the NHS, under the Tory leadership. So the wider question should be is something that the Tory party have to answer for, as to why this money wasn't available for the. What's the word? The production of plasma in the UK laboratories, and why they were so dependent on exporting from America. Now, the further you dive into this question, you would probably find that it was a deal that was brokered under, successive American presidents to former British prime ministers, that Britain would be solely reliant on America producing this and Britain buying it. Therefore, that negates the need for Britain to actually put any investment into the development of plasma within Britain.
So, Chris, if I can interject for a moment, is it your belief then that the reasons which the UK government gave at the time for not pursuing the manufacturing of hemoglobulins from UK plasma, which was that there was BSE in the UK at the time, and there was a risk of people contracting Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, the human form of mad cow disease. Is that, in your view, just not true? I think that was just an excuse.
Well, I think it was possibly. I, I, I think it was possibly something that they were wary of.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to move on from that. And what I'm calling for is the UK government to actually invest in the British economy rather than just passing the buck over to America.
So you think, Chris, this is an opportunity for the UK government to invest in its science, its medical sciences, and actually start to expand this kind of research rather than slashing the funding for it?
They have to, you know, again, you look at the current situation at this moment in time, Gordon, where you see that investment by the Scottish government into R&D, with regards medicines, has been brought to the fore with the ongoing development of vaccines in Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
So the technology exists within Britain because obviously you've got the hastened onslaught of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. It is doable, but what I'm saying is that for the last 10, 15, maybe even 20 years, the Tory government have not actually invested into research and development and have relied heavily on private companies doing it for them. Because at the end of the day, Tories love private companies, don't
They like to make money, Chris, yeah?
That's it in a nutshell, Gordon.
Okay, well, listen, we're going to move away from medicine now to music. And making music together tunes up your well-being during the COVID lockdowns. Spontaneous group music making is associated with a number of well-being benefits, even if the performers are not in the same room, a study has shown. Online improvisation sessions by international group of musicians enhanced mood, lowered levels of loneliness, and promoted a feeling of community during the first COVID-19 lockdown, the researchers found. The study is the first to investigate the effects of global online music making during the pandemic. Researchers at Edinburgh College of Art examined the experiences of Glasgow Improvisers Orchestra, a diverse group of players which includes musicians who have performed with the National Jazz Orchestra and the BBC Scottish Symphony Orchestra. The orchestra began improvisation sessions as a way of staying connected during lockdown. Musicians from other parts of the world were also invited to the Zoom sessions. Researchers interviewed a sample of 29 musicians who took part in twice-weekly sessions from March 2020 till June 2020, as well as boosting their mood and providing the community. The musicians reported that the sessions gave them an opportunity for artistic development. The findings also show that improvisation is well suited to digital music making, as it facilitates creativity between musicians, the researchers said. This is despite previous studies finding that latency issues, the time taken for sounds to travel via the internet from one location to another, can affect online music making, where musicians are required to play in sync. Researchers say the results can help to understand the benefits of online group music, in providing emotional support, particularly for creative professionals who may have been adversely affected socially, economically, by the pandemic. So, Chris, this is a very interesting study showing that group music making online has health benefits, it has mental health benefits. Were you surprised to hear this in this report today?
No, I'm not at all surprised, and I'm glad that this subject came up. Before Christmas, actually, I foolishly took my banjo to get a service, and the village music shop in East Kilbride, and I've not been able to get it back. And I miss it because there's sometimes when I am feeling a wee bit down and stuff like that, I'm quite happy to turn the television off couple of rolls on the banjo and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it brightens up my mood. Music has always been an untapped space of therapy
Yeah.
for a lot of people. I mean, even I think it was well documented that the famous composer Schubert used to take out all his anger on the piano. And then at the end of the day or the end of the week, come up with one of the world's wonderful concertos. I think that I have got a vested interest in this because years and years ago, I managed to leave St Mum's Academy in Paisley with a music O grade, and I have got a bit of a thespian background. So, music is good. Uh, in a Zoom call with my sons and stuff like that, we've attempted to have a wee sort of like jam sesh and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, so it's a brilliant story. It really is, Gordon.
Okay, well, it's always nice to finish a programme with a happy story, Chris. So I'm glad we could do that this evening. And it's always interesting to hear your personal adventures as well as part of the interview.
Well, could also
Yeah.
just come out with a personal thanks to Linda, for my self-enforced absence thing. I have been struggling with my mental health and depression since Christmas. So thanks very much for Linda for keeping in touch and encouraging me to come back on the show. It's really appreciated. Thank you very much.
Well, Chris, I mean, having friends online, not just with music, but also television, is probably just as good for your mental health and well-being. Anyway, I hope so. And it's come to that time of the programme where I need to remind our viewers that we're in the middle of a major crowdfunder at the moment. So if you would like to help Broadcasting Scotland to be there through the rest of 2021 for all of the big events which are coming up, you can do so by following the instructions on your screen now. You can become a supporter of Broadcasting Scotland for just £5 a month. You can give an individual donation or you can volunteer, whichever you like. Anyway, that's about all we have time for tonight. My thanks to Chris McCusker from the SNP Socialist Group, and to Linda, of course, our producer, and everybody else here at Broadcasting Scotland. I'll see you again later on this week. Bye-bye for now.
What distinguishes Broadcasting Scotland from a website or blog, apart from our brilliant programmes,
Hi there, I'm Gordon Ross.
are the costs we face to enable us to produce those programmes. These costs are significant and ongoing. However, our facilities are able to do so much more if only we had the staff. In the last year, some of our supporters have cancelled their subscriptions. In one way, we would prefer it if it was because they didn't like us, rather than it being because of the financial pressures which we are all under because of COVID. The really positive outcome of our fundraiser is that at a time of economic challenge in Scotland, we will use your donations to create jobs and in a small way contribute to improving the Scottish economy. If you want us to be Scotland's independent broadcaster, able to provide an alternative mainstream television platform, then please support us.
Scotland is going to be an independent country.
Just imagine what we could do if we had even 1% of the BBC Scotland channel's budget. Imagine. And then please consider turning your imagination into reality. Please support us if you can afford it.